I'm the chairman of Concordia. It's an honor to be here with this very impressive panel for a very important topic. Just a few Zoom housekeeping notes. Everyone is, all the guests are automatically muted upon your entry. So if you would like to ask a question during the Q&A, please type it in the Q&A feature or type it in the chat, and you can vote on fellow colleagues' questions by using the thumbs up next to the question. So we'll be monitoring the chat feature, but we encourage you to use the Q&A platform as well to use questions. I would like to thank all our speakers for being here today, especially Justice for Kurds and the Octavian Report for partnering with Concordia for this webinar. We just come off our annual summit, which many of you participated in, and throughout the year we'll be continuing to hold events like this. I want to make sure to mention that, as always, this discussion is very important to us, looking at it from a perspective of strengthening and supporting the partnership ecosystem. That's what Concordia was founded on. And that's why Concordia is, with this event and many others, reaffirming its unwavering commitment to maintaining our position as the leading nonpartisan convener alongside the UN General Assembly, but also throughout the year. Concordia is a membership-based organization. So if you're invited to this program by us, by the Octavian Report, or by Justice for Kurds, we would welcome you to take a look at our membership program and answer any questions you have. So just to note, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website, concordia.net, at a later date. So enough from me. I want to turn it over to Bayan Sami Abdul Rahman. Bayan is a representative to the United States for the Kurdistan regional government. Bayan, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Nick. And I would also like to thank Justice for Kurds, Concordia, and the Octavian Report for hosting this event. I think it's an important and timely event. So our two guests today are two remarkable gentlemen. I'll begin by giving a very brief overview of Major General Sirwan Barzani. Welcome, General Barzani. Sirwan Barzani was a peshmerga. He was part of the Kurdish liberation movement against Saddam Hussein, and he fought as part of that opposition to the dictator. He then went into business and began a very successful telecoms company. And then in 2014, when ISIS came, he went back to the military. This was a time when Kurdistan and Iraq and other countries in the region were at threat. And we have to thank people like Major General Barzani and others who took up arms and defeated ISIS. So I would like actually to take this opportunity to salute all of the martyrs, all of those peshmerga who were killed, wounded in the fight against ISIS, as well as the Iraqi forces, coalition forces, and others who fought against this terrorist organization. So it's a great honor to have Major General Sirwan Barzani with us today. I think his story, his personal story, but also his participation in the fight against ISIS, in the fight for liberty and democracy, and all of the values that we hold dear is very important. And it's great that we have him here today to hear that story. And then our other guest is Bernard-Henri Lévy, a very well-known and highly regarded philosopher, filmmaker, documentary maker, author of at least 30 books, and of course, a champion for the Kurds. And as a Kurd, I would like to thank you, Mr. Philosopher, for your support and for championing the Kurds. I think many people forget that the Kurds have suffered and endured so much throughout our history. We are divided between 4 countries, and many of those countries have treated their Kurds, their own population, Kurdish or otherwise, very, very poorly. and we have often relied on our friends abroad to champion our cause, to speak on our behalf. So Bernard has a remarkable history himself. As I said, he has written many books, made films. Two of the films that perhaps are relevant today, one is simply called Peshmerga, and was a documentary filmed, I believe, in 2015, following the progress of the Peshmerga against ISIS. The other film, again a documentary, The Battle of Mosul. So, as I said earlier, two remarkable gentlemen, and I'm honored to be moderating this conversation. So I think to start us off, I would like to begin by asking both of you, perhaps I will begin with General Barzani and then come to you, Mr. Lévy. But I want us to go back to the summer of 2014. You know, today, many people believe ISIS is finished. Of course, we know it's not completely finished, and we can come to that. But let's go back to summer of 2014. We need to remind ourselves of the shock that ISIS caused, not just in Iraq, Syria, and the Middle East, but across the world. You know, just to put it into context, when ISIS overran Mosul, this sent shockwaves. Mosul is Iraq's second largest city. Historically, it's played an important role in the whole region. It's been a trade center, a cultural center, a military center. And for a few thousand people, terrorists, to overrun it was a shock. And then, of course, what ISIS did with the genocide against the Yazidis, the Christians, and others. And at that time, it seemed to us that this Mad Max-like army was invincible. They were terrorizing people, rampaging through across 1/3 of Iraq. They took over 1/3 of Iraqi territory. So I think it's really important we go back to the summer of 2014. And I would like to ask each of you just to recount, where were you? What were you doing? What were your thoughts? What actions did you take when all of this occurred? And I'll begin with Kak Sirwan, Major Barzani, General Barzani.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bayan Khan. Thank you very much. Dear Bernard, thank you. And a special thank to the chairman of the Concordia, Mr. Nick, and the whole organization of Concordia and JFK to organizing this event. Thank you very much. Yes, sure. As you mentioned, so I just returned for join Peshmerga again when ISIS came to Mosul. And then I just was an operation center established, but after exactly the day would happen against our brother, the Yazidi Kurds in Sinjar on 3rd of August. Then I was preparing to join the Peshmerga in Sinjar mountain just the day after, with the President Barzani and the whole team and the generals. I told them I'm ready to go there to the Sinjar mountain to help these people on the Peshmerga there. But suddenly what happened, so even they started to came to Erbil, ISIS, especially in that time, was no coalition starting to support. So they came like a convoy, as you remember how they starting with the psychological war, how they treat the people, how they kill the people, took the women, they killed the kids in Syria and Iraq. And they mentioned it, you know, with the high quality video to just, it you know, was big fear and psychological war against everybody. So when they came, unfortunately, what we saw, so 4 Iraqi division, 4 Iraqi division, military division, 2 Iraqi police division, you know, they just ran away and left all the new weapons, Western and Eastern, Russian and American weapons belong to them. They just left it and ran away, unfortunately. And each division of Iraqi army, they had more than whole Ministry of Peshmerga new weapon. And they just leave it for ISIS, and they came. So suddenly when they came to cross to Erbil, they went in Hawira, just 25 kilometers to Citadel, to center of the city. So in that time, the president called me, say, should be ready because they are coming to Erbil. I went, just prepare myself. I start to go. It was 150 peshmerga waiting in Baharka close to Erbil. I took them with me and we went. And that time was big fear and threat. Even many people from Erbil, they left Erbil. Many companies, Turkish company, left because they say they are coming to Erbil because, as you know, it was no any border, it was no any front line in that time. It was the responsibility of the Iraqi army. It was no peshmerga on whole this area. So it became really big threat and big surprise for everybody, you know, just to wake up to have more than 1,100 kilometers or the front line with the most dangerous people in the world. With all this weapon, I mentioned it, they taken from even Syria, Syrian opposition, and especially Iraqi 6th Division of Army. So we went there with those peshmerga. Thanks to those peshmerga, of course, the first front line we just started was 6th of August 2014. We arrived there, it was just early evening, like 7 p.m. So I tried with some, let's say the camp was some of the soldiers, Iraqi soldiers lived there, they are Kurds, but they, with Iraqi army, they were preparing to leave this camp, go to Erbil. When I arrived there with this 150 peshmerga, I told them, where are you going? So we will go to Erbil and to our families because we cannot stay here anymore. ISIS are coming. So now you have to stay with us. So and then I try with them too hard to just show me where they are, where should we go, if they have map, but I can't not succeed with them. So early morning, I just went with a few peshmerga. We went to a small high ground, the hill close to the, what is the headquarters, let's say the camp of the Black Tiger now. It's just like less than 6 kilometers from there. We just stopped them. It was a first front line or first stop of ISIS in Iraq and Kurdistan and Syria at that time. And then, of course, it's a long story. I gave a very small target to my peshmerga to give them a morale to go to just retake, to push ISIS back for very small villages close to Gwer. And then early morning, we prepared to liberate Gwer and Mahmoud, the two towns in my sector. So of course, Sector 6, I'm commanding, it's holding Erbil, south and southwest of Erbil. And I announced it the TV at that time. I say, this is my second message. First message, of course, it was for people in Erbil. When the reporter told me it was live for the TV, for some TV, say, what's your message to people in Erbil? They can stay in Erbil. Do you give them guarantee? I say, yes, this is a guarantee. We are here as a peshmerga. They can go and relax, go to the parks. So don't worry. And second message with the Ruda was next day when they mentioned, say, what was your first message to the people to stay in Erbil? They have to feel safe. What's your next message? I told them, this is my new message for the people in Erbil. We are ready to retake, to push ISIS back from Gwer and Mahmoud, and I need only 4 hours waiting for the green light. And then it happened, of course, early morning of 10th of August, we start with the operation. We prepare the whole plan for that. We push them back and we retake Gwer in less than 4 hours. As I mentioned before, the day before, so it was really a big surprise for them also. And also after I just finished the Gwer, we reached the bridge. I just give the order to my commanders by the plan to start at Mahmoud. And also we retake Mahmoud on the same day, 10th of August, and less than 4 hours. So this was the beginning of that. So the first flag of ISIS was down by our peshmerga in our sector in Iraq and Syria.
Right. I think what you said, General Barzani, about reassuring the public, I think that's so important. I wasn't in Kurdistan around that time, but of course I have many very, very close relatives and friends, and of course all of our people there. And the sense of panic that ISIS had run across a third of Iraq, was committing genocide, attacking Shingal, or Sinjar, and they were heading for Erbil. So I think your reassurances were really a morale booster. And your courage, I think it shouldn't be underestimated, yours and the fellow Peshmerga and others. We really have to remember how terrifying ISIS appeared at that time. Now we know different. Of course, we know the bravery of the Peshmerga and other forces, but at that time, it wasn't so apparent. So kudos to you for everything you've done. And just to clarify one or two things that you mentioned the Black Tiger camp. So this is the name of the camp where you are the commander of Sector 6, which is, as you said, just southeast of Erbil, and protecting Erbil, which is the capital of the Kurdistan region. And I should also note that you have put up a monument to the Peshmerga in your sector who have lost their lives. And I've had the honor of visiting that monument. Thank you very much. And now I would like to turn to you, Henri, if you don't mind. Please tell us about 2014, summer of 2014.
I will tell you about 2014, but also 2015. 2014, you said it all, and Sirwan said it all also. Not only Iraq, but the entire area, a region, and the entire world was mesmerized by the alleged power of ISIS. The whole world thought that ISIS was Al-Qaeda threat, a square, that it was much bigger than Al-Qaeda, and that it was a world threat, which it was. ISIS was definitely threatening, attacking, bombing the whole world, and every single city in the world felt threatened by ISIS. This is what I thought, and what we all Westerners thought when the city of Mosul fell. City of Mosul, which was not only a very big city of Iraq, it is a symbolic city for the entire humanity. It is a city which was already present in the holy books of the three monotheisms of Judaism, of Christianity, and of Islam under the name of Nineveh. So it was a huge symbolical, political, and military event. Then I wrote immediately some articles, some columns in my usual newspapers in the West as soon as it happened. And I heard, because I was, of course, plugged on the news from this summer 2014. I was literally plugged on the news. And I heard that while we were in the West mesmerized, there was a group of men and women. There was some generals, and there was in particular one general, Sirwan Barzani, who were standing against this enemy which was threatening all of us. And I very soon understood that there was a wall of human beings, a rampart of ladies and gentlemen called the Peshmerga, in the territory of KRG, not far from Erbil, who was protecting their homes, of course, their country, but the whole world against this ISIS threat. And for me, this was like, I don't know, like a warning, like an intimate call, like, I don't know how to call it. But when I understood that Sirwan Barzani, I did not know him at this time. I knew, because I read the news, that he was a very successful businessman, that he was a young and handsome man, that he was gifted by a lot of things in this world. When I heard that he was quitting everything, abandoning everything, going on front line, and keeping awake in order to be sure that Erbil and the world could sleep, honestly, I told to myself, I have to see this man. I have to meet these ladies and these gentlemen. I have to go on the ground. A few months after, I did it. I went in Erbil. I met your now president, who was at this time the prime minister, Sirwan Barzani, and I went to the front line. First of all, I went to the Tiger camp, which you just mentioned, between Guer and Marcour, and I had the great honor to meet Sirwan and the great joy for a man to make a new friend. And we went together on the front line. I made a piece about it, and I was so moved by the bravery of these men. I was so shocked by the fact that they were fighting alone. I was so disturbed by the image of their weak weaponry, having to face these suicide trunks and these heavy weaponed battalions of ISIS, that I remember so well. We had a meeting, Sirwan, myself and a few others. And I thought, I have to do something. Coming back from the front, I have to do something. This idea is unbearable, of this loneliness of the peshmerga protecting us and us doing nothing. So I said, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. General, would you accept to come to plead the cause of the peshmerga, which is the cause of the world, in Paris? They said, yes, why not? I went back to France and I organized a meeting in Élysée Palace with the French president of this time, François Hollande. A few weeks after, General Sirwan Barzani came with a group of commanders from all the front line, the 1,000 kilometers of the front line. They came in Paris. They met François Hollande. They met a lot of opinion leaders in France, opinion makers. And then I hope that I did give something in terms of support, of moral support and of intellectual support to the cause of the fight against ISIS. We had this meeting. After that, we had the idea of shooting this documentary film Peshmerga, which I directed with a group of friends on the front line from June 2015 to the Battle of Sinjar in December 2015. I remember, by the way, when Sinjar fell, when the genocide of the Yazidi happened, when the news arrived of all these young ladies kidnapped, raped, and killed by these barbarians, I remember having sworn to myself, having made the oath to myself, that one day I will have to go and to be myself in liberated Sinjar, and this is what happened. So I made Peshmerga. It was a big adventure for me. I hope it was not completely useless. I hope it contributed to bring some new support, or at least some consciousness in the West of this incredible bravery of the Kurds, of the fact that we share the same values, and of the fact that we have not only the same enemy, but that we have the same reasons and the same moral background when we fight, you the Kurds, and us the Europeans, the same enemy which were and which still are ISIS.
Thank you. And Bernard, you said you wanted to talk about 2015. Did you mean the film or something else?
Film. I meant the film. I mean the film. This film, Peshmerga, which is one of the real prides of my life. I did a lot of things. I'm not so young now. Among the numerous things which I did, the fact of having filmed and shot images from kilometer number 1 to Sinjar of this front line is one of the real greatest sources of pride of my life. The fact of having met some brave generals, Sirwan Barzani first of all, and others after him, is again a thing which till my last breathing I will keep in my memory, in my heart. And this year 2015 was that for me. 2015 for a Frenchman, it is the terrorist attack of January and the terrorist attack of November. 2015 was in the jaws of 2 series of terrorist attacks on our national ground. And in between, I was on the front line with the commanders of Sirwan Barzani. Terrorist attack in between this front line. I tried to share as much as I could the daily life of the peshmergas. I tried to be witness as much as I could of their of the battles which they waged. There was a great cameraman working on this film. We had 3 cameramen, 2 French gentlemen, Camille Otto, Olivier Jacquin, and a Kurdish cameraman, Ala Tayeb, who is also a real encounter of my life, who, by the way, this is one of the dark points of the year 2015 for me. The worst happened, the worst possible on the shooting of a movie. Ala Tayeb was heavily wounded during the shooting. He was wounded in one of the scenes of the film of Peshmerga. You can see it. I suppose it is on YouTube. If not, it should be on Redao as soon as possible. And you will see this terrible moment when one of the members of my crew, the brave Ala Tayeb, explodes on a mine with the 3 Peshmergas who were on the pickup. The 3 Peshmerga die in this moment. And Ala Tayeb, because he was filming at this very moment the body outside the pickup to hold his camera, he was ejected from the car. He survived, and he had his shoulder heavily wounded. François Margolin, the producer of the movie, myself, the Prime Minister Sirwan Barzani, we took care of him. He went in France. He was well cured also in Kurdistan, and thanks God, today he's safe. All that is 2015 for me. Souvenirs of pride and souvenirs of sorrow also, and souvenirs of mourning. I saw many. It was a victory for the Peshmerga, but a victory with some ambushes and a victory with a dark side. I saw some of these Peshmerga wounded or killed, and Sirwan saw that infinitely more than I did.
Yes. I think it is important to remind ourselves of all of that. As you mentioned, the terrorist attacks in Paris, in Belgium, there were even attacks here in the United States. So it was a dark time worldwide. And as you said, the Peshmerga and the people of Kurdistan were at the heart of this fight, the people of Iraq. I should also add that there are so many people who are still wounded today, living with those wounds, living with those injuries. And there are so many families who have lost loved ones, either through genocide or through fighting ISIS. And our heart goes out to all of those victims. And I hope and I pray with all of my heart that there will be justice. I think one of the problems that we have in the Middle East, in Iraq, I dare say in Syria as well, is the lack of justice. If we look at Iraq, the people of Iraq have suffered so many episodes of genocide. The Kurds alone, if we talk about only the Kurds in Iraq, we have had Halabja, chemical bombardment. Saddam used chemical weapons more than 200 times against the Kurds. entire cities and villages were destroyed, and so on. But there has never been a sense of justice. And of course, there is a very big movement now to try to bring ISIS criminals to justice. The process is slow, but at least the UN is engaged, and we must thank the coalition members and the United States, which is leading the coalition, for their role in all of this. But can you both please touch on the issue of justice? How do you see justice in terms of what happened with ISIS, and how do we go forward with justice as one of the aspects that would allow us to progress? Maybe General Barzani, you could start us off on that.
About the justice, of course, there is no justice for Kurdistan people, not only for Kurd people living in Kurdistan. Unfortunately, is unfair what's going on, of course, with our people here, even as you mentioned during Saddam time, because maybe nobody or few people, they knew what's happening in our part of Kurdistan. Let's say with the KRG now, we lose 200,000 people, civilian people, between 1981 to 1991. So this is even nothing happened for those, not only it's more than terror attack. I think, the genocide's what happened. So it's come to ISIS as a terrorist group. I don't think some justice will happen for the Kurds, because we suffered. Until today, if we compare what our needs, I mentioned just the peshmerga, not about the whole, as you know, what's going on about lack of budget, about the sanction. I can say we are under sanction till today. Till today, we're under sanction even from Baghdad, so there is no justice for Kurdistan till now. And thanks to the dear friends, as you mentioned, the champion of the Kurds, we're proud of Mr. Lévy really for his support, at least for morale, for, let's say, for our voice to hand over it, to give it to the European, to the American, especially with his film, documentary. He's act like a real brave peshmerga, really, because it was not necessary for him as a producer for the film to go and visit this front line, because at least I saw him in our front line with the real dangerous area, the most dangerous spot on this world was Sultan Abdullah. He came with me twice to this area, even at night. So we thank him and many our friends and other friends, but really we proud of Mr. Bernard-Henri Lévy during this war, because he became our voice, the right voice, because we as a peshmerga, everybody knows, we fight on behalf of the civilization in the war. It's not only, it's right, we are in the front, we are ready, and we are committed as always to fight ISIS until today. Maybe many people knows, but there is still, for example, in my sector, in Karachuk Mountain, still permanent ISIS are there. Since back 3 months, just coalition with the coordination with the peshmerga killed 115 ISIS fighters just in this mountain. So we thanks the brave peshmerga, really the brave peshmerga, Mr. Lévy, for what he did for us. But we need more and more, really as a peshmerga, we need more. And even now, even today, of course, thanks a lot for whole coalition, for the support. It was not easy job. It was not so easy without especially, let's say, the strikes, the support of the coalition to the peshmerga. But at the end, we give our blood. So, and so, always I said, it was a historical moment for us to see as a people in Kurdistan to have the Air Force with us. In the history, this is the first time the Kurds can see the jets helping us against the terrorists. Always, 100 years back, we've been bombed, civilian villages, peshmerga, by the air forces of of the enemy for what? For nothing, of course, for just because we want to live in peace and democracy, for nothing else. We don't want anything else. So as justice-wise, is unfair what's going on with people in Kurdistan till today, till now. It's unfair, but so we cannot do something extra. What we can, so we are ready to give our blood, what we did before, and even now, to save the people here, to save the civilization in the whole world. But what's going on, it's unfair.
Thank you. Bernard, please.
Unfair is the word, and justice is the challenge. Unfair, of course. I cannot forget, we spoke about summer 2014, summer 2015. There was also the summer 2017, when, 16, I'm sorry, the referendum. After so
17,
many,
yes.
17, yes, yes, 17 of course, when the brave people of KRG, after so many sacrifices, after so many bloodshed, when they decided to make this autodetermination referendum, which was just a consultation, which had no aim to unsettle the regional balance, which was President Barzani at this time was taking this initiative in a very wise and responsible way. At this moment, I remember that day by day, the West had a shameful behavior. First of all, saying you cannot do that, it's very dangerous, you are going, it is too early or too late or whatever. And then I was in Erbil this day, the day of the referendum. I went back this very day on the front lines where I was 2 years before during the fight. I was there when the same peshmergas were exchanging their Kalashnikov against some ink on the finger to vote. I remember that so well. I was in the same spots. I was an international observer of the poll of the referendum. I saw that it was an exemplary referendum, that it was perfectly held. And I remember there was a dinner this night with Sirwan and others. When the hours passed, and each hour there was the understanding among us that the world was turning its back to you, and that the world was betraying again KRG. And I remember really on the face of my Kurdish friends, in their voice, the comeback of the long story of martyrdom. I belong to a people who has been also martyred in the past, so I know the smell of that. When you feel betrayed, when you feel abandoned, this has a very special smell, a very special, strange voice. And this day, just before 2 days before the Battle of Alton Koupri, when there was again a big challenge, there was this smell of abandonment in KRG. So unfair for sure. I took the last plane before the blockade of the whole country by all your neighbors, including your Iraqi neighbor or partner. I don't want to put you into trouble. Let's say your partner in the federation. And I remember taking this last plane with such a taste of bitterness in my mouth. Then justice is the challenge. You know, both of you, and I would like all our followers of this webinar to know, I know how many, we are a big number in America, in Europe, following this webinar. We created, with my friend, the American philanthropist Thomas Kaplan, an organization based in New York, which is precisely called Justice for Kurds. which is aimed at trying to obtain this missing justice for the Kurdish people. And Thomas Kaplan is a very well-known intellectual, businessman and philanthropist in the West, and we associated our forces, him in New York and me in Europe, to do our best to repair this lack of justice, which means a lot of things. It means proper justice in front of the tribunals, trials for the criminals. It means also memory. If you want, when a people, if we want a people to obtain justice, the first task is to remember. The first task is to make everyone in the world aware of what happened, aware of the debt. So the first step for justice is the awareness of the debt. The world has a debt regarding the Kurds. There is a debt of us. We owe a debt to the Kurds. The first step on this challenge of justice is the debt to be recognized. The military debt, the moral debt, the symbolical debt. Sirwan said very properly that there is still at this moment an embargo on the weapons directed on your region. This is completely crazy. I remember, by the way, one of the most terrible souvenirs for me of this year, 2015, when I was in one of your camps, when there was some victims of a chemical attack by ISIS. The wounds of these victims is something which a normal woman or man cannot forget. The sort of wounds which chemical arms make on a body are unforgettable. There was, from the West, no protection coming against these sorts of weapons. No combination, no masks, and so on. We have a lot of masks against COVID, but masks against these chemical attacks at these times, nothing came from non-country, including mine, including France. The only protections which came, I brought them myself with Dr. Jacques Beres, my next trip, which we ourselves purchased and brought in our luggage. So this has to be repaired. This debt has to be recognized. And I recommend to those who are attending this webinar, there is one experience which I recommend to them. There is a place in the Barzan Mountains, far from the front line, the Barzan Mountains, which is a sort of a stemming place for the Barzani family, where there is a museum of the sort of memory place of the martyrdom. This has to be visited. This should be visited by every single woman or man concerned by our debt regarding the Kurds. And last word, JFK is doing its best, I must even say fighting, in New York since now 2 years, and I hope we will reach the point. We are fighting, we are battling in order to obtain the right to settle in New York City a monument, a symbolic monument telling the glory of the peshmerga. One of the dreams of Thomas Kaplan, one of my dreams, and one of the projects of JFK is to obtain, to achieve that monument for the peshmerga in the capital, this capital of the world, which is still New York.
Well, if anyone can achieve that, it's you and Thomas Kaplan. So we wish you every success, and it would be so wonderful to see a monument like that in the streets of New York. So we have less than 15 minutes left. I have so many questions, but I will pass on some of the questions we've received from the participants. There are some questions about Turkey, Turkey's footprint in Iraqi Kurdistan and in Syria. There is a question about what happened in Sinjar in 2014. A question, how do you view the support or lack thereof coming from the United States, morally and militarily? Perhaps I can say something about that since I have a role here in the United States. Another question, how optimistic can we be that the new Iraqi Prime Minister will work in partnership with the KRG to reform and reset relations and overcome the immediate impact of COVID and the reduction in oil revenues? And so I've thrown out several questions, and please feel free to answer as you wish. So there was a question about Sinjar, what happened there, a question about Turkey, a question about the support from the United States, and are we optimistic about the new Prime Minister? I have my own views, and I have an official role here, but in this presentation today, I'm purely the moderator, so I will leave you both to answer. Perhaps General Barzani, would you like to start? And please take any of those questions.
Yes, so about what happened in Sinjar or Sinjar, what they mentioned in the beginning, and the genocide happened against our brother Yazidi Kurds, really is a tragedy, and it's, I cannot say, you know, how's the feeling that happened. And many people mentioned that some of the people who they don't know what's going on here in the country, they are outside. They mentioned this is also because of Peshmerga, what's happened there. And it's totally wrong, because was no Peshmerga there, where as parties, let's say that the parties in Kurdistan, they have a headquarter or branch, let's say KDP or PUK or the Islamic neighborhood, as any parties there, they have their own headquarters, small, and they have maximum maybe 20 to 30 Peshmerga to save them. It was totally under Iraqi security, same as Kirkuk, same as Mahmur, same, all this area was now, it's officially, they call it, you know, the disputed area under Article 140 is not solved there, the problem. So that time, as the rest of the area, when ISIS came, so as I mentioned, it was a very big surprise for the whole people in Kurdistan, inside KRG or outside KRG, because of the Iraqi security system, the wrong system in Baghdad, what happened, and they just left and left the whole weapons and run away to those terrorists. And when they came, and we didn't, not only about was not preparing, because what the constitution of Iraq, Peshmerga part of the security system of Iraq. So should the emanations, the weapons, budget, training budget, everything should come from Baghdad. Nothing came till today, not only that time. So any army that needs equipment, the training, the budget, was nothing, and it was not our responsibility at all as a Peshmerga. I was not joining Peshmerga at that time. It just came after that, joining Peshmerga again. But the whole Ministry of Peshmerga was not any responsibility on the Ministry of Peshmerga, it was the Iraqi side. Because if you are not prepared, if you just wake up to have more than 1,000 kilometers of front line and in a flat area, it's not in a mountain, it was better for Peshmerga if it was a mountain to defeat it, but it's a totally flat area. We don't have any weapons, anti-tanks to stop those Humvees. Thousands of Humvees just left for ISIS from Iraqi army. So it was what happened there. It's happened like any another place, like we mentioned, they just came 25 kilometers to center of the capital of Kurdistan. It's more important than any cities. It was not under our control because it was not any forces there, was not preparing, was no weapons, nothing, you know. So what happened there? Unfortunately, it's the genocides happened against the Yazidi Kurds because of the religion, because of the belief of the Yazidis. Unfortunately, some radical Muslim, they hate them, you know, as a old-fashioned mentality, terror mentality, can say. But in this time, the first time we can mention President Masoud Barzani, of course, he's a Muslim. But first time as a leader Muslim, he went to the front line, took his camp too close to Sinjar, and he promised the whole holy leaders of the Yazidis, he said, I will push them back, I will take the revenge, I will push them back, I will take you back, this is my promise to Sinjar. And he did that. Thanks to him, thanks to the Peshmerga, of course, thanks to our friend and the coalition with the support of them. But this is what the reality, what happened there. It's nothing related to the Peshmerga. It was no, if the Peshmerga have enough forces, they can save Erbil, you know, they just came 25 kilometers to heart of Erbil. And so I hope it's clear. I don't know if it's a question is the right one or the right answer.
I think many people have questions over what happened in Sinjar, and I think we should recognize the tragedy for the Yazidis and, of course, for the Christians and others who suffered the genocide, and they still live with those wounds today. And, of course, our condolences to the Yazidi community. Their spiritual leader, Baba Sheikh, has just passed away. And as you said, General Barzani, President Masoud Barzani, who was president at the time, he made a promise and he delivered. And many of us are inspired by what he did and the sacrifices he made personally. Bernard, I don't know if you want to address any of those questions, or do you want me to move on to some of the new questions?
No, the question of Sinjar and of the Yazidi is an important question, because I know that there is a sort of misinformation going on all around the world about that. I am witness of, I'm convinced of one thing and witness of two things. The thing I'm convinced of, as any reasonable person, is that when the takeover by ISIS came of Sinjar, the whole world, as I said at the start of this conversation, was mesmerized. The Iraqi army was completely burst out. So how could one put the responsibility of that to the single Kurds? This is completely crazy. The whole world was frightened by ISIS. It was like a surprise coup by ISIS. And the Peshmerga, who were not really on the spot, who were completely flabbergasted by the arrival of it, should be the only guilty one. This is completely absurd. And you need only some plot theories to put that on the shoulders of the Kurds. What I am witness of is two things. Number one, during the 2015 year, when I was doing my shooting of the documentary film Peshmerga, going from Soleimani to Sinjar, the whole border between the Kurds and ISIS, I met Masoud Barzani a few times. I had the great honor to be received by him, to be hosted by him a few times. And we had, between my team and his advisors, we had a password. And this password, I will not tell you which it is, was the password which would be pronounced, because I went back and forth. I was on the front line and I was back in France and again to the front line. The password was to be pronounced before the attack of Sinjar. When the Kurds would be ready for the attack against ISIS in Sinjar, the password has to be pronounced. And I can tell you that for every Kurdish responsible which I met, starting from the president, this was like a holy target to punish ISIS in Sinjar, to liberate Sinjar, to give justice to these Yazidi families so violented and raped, was, this is what I'm witness of, a sort of sacred target of this war. If there can be in the liberation war some sacred or holy targets, this one of them. I remember so well. Each time I went back to Paris, I said, don't forget to give me the password. And at the end, in November, end of October, at last, I had a call from one of Masoud Barzani's advisors telling me, Mr. Bernard, he told me the password. I knew the day had come. I came immediately back to Erbil, and it is the end of the film. The second thing I can bear witness for, when I made my second film, The Battle of Mosul, I spoke with a lot of people, including some Yazidis and including representatives of all minorities in the area, especially Christians. And this is in the movie called The Battle of Mosul. Most of them, I cannot say all of them because you can never say all, but most of them said, in the future of the area, to protect our families, our children, in order not to be obliged to be the last Christians to leave the earth when the Christ was born, the only people we trust are the Kurds. We trust, this is what they said. The survivors of the genocide of the Yazidi, those who remained in their monasteries close to the front line among the Christian minority, they said, in this hell which has become this war, in this dark world in which we are entering, if we have to trust one, it is the Kurds. I had this testimony, this message so many times. It is in the Battle of Mosul. This is my personal witness.
Well, thank you so much for that. So we are almost at the end of the hour. I'm not sure if we're able to extend or not. While I'm waiting to hear whether we're able to continue, I just want to let you know that there have been many other questions which we haven't been able to cover. Several questions about the referendum. If it wasn't for independence, why hold a referendum? A question for you, Bernard, would you make a film about the referendum? A question about Iran.
I made a book. I made a book.
What's the name of the book?
The Empire and the Five Kings, which was published in France and in America, is the book starting from the referendum of 2017 and starting from my shame when I saw that the free world, quote, was abandoning the Kurds.
Right. Thank you. So I've been told that we have another 10 minutes maximum. So as I said, questions about the referendum, questions about Turkey, about Iran. There was earlier a question about the role of the United States. Are they supportive, not supportive? Of course, I have a view on that, but I'm not the person speaking here today. Also, another question about Al-Hol camp. So this is the camp in Syria under the control of the Syrian Democratic Forces, where ISIS members and families are in detention. And apparently the SDF have announced that some of them will be released. Is this of concern? So those are all the questions that are floating around. There's another question. Is there a thought that a Biden administration in the United States would be a better American ally? And then a question from me as well about coexistence in Kurdistan. I have tragedy in my own family, as many Kurds have. My father and brother, along with many others, almost 100 others, were killed by Islamist extremists, terrorists. I have been able to continue in my work and in my belief in in Kurdistan, because I believe our people are a bulwark, are a wall against extremism, against terrorism. And I think, going back to what you said, Bernard, this is why people flee to Kurdistan for safety. This is why, with all of the shortcomings we have, people prefer Kurdish support than others. But that's a question from me about coexistence in Kurdistan, but those were the other questions that were raised. So perhaps 4 minutes each on any of those questions that you want to take. General Barzani.
Yes, so if go back from about the referendum, so the referendum, it's something it's very normal and the most democratic way, I think, for people to announce what they want. And everybody saw what's going on, and many people, many advisors, most of the diplomatic corps in Kurdistan, they were controlling what's during the referendum. It was very smooth, it's very democratic way, very quiet, and everybody knows that. And of course, more than 93% vote for yes for that. Of course, this is for if it's depends of the convenience and time, but it's for independence of the Kurdistan to have our state, and it's our right, and why not? But many people say you want that, you want to destroy the country, destroy Iraq. It's not right, in my view. Always I talk to the people, to the officials, because opposition time, we know each other for both sides, Sunnis or Shia. It's something, I think it's an on benefit for Iraq, I think, because this country, you know, it's more than 100 years, speak of time when divided to the Kurdistan divided and the area, you know, be divided in that time. It was misdivided, you know. So those people, they cannot live with each other. It's not for our side. We as a Kurds in Iraq, we are accepting Shia and Sunni, and we approve that. We approve that. We don't have problem with them, but they have problem to each other. And if you are in a let's say it's a big family, okay, so if you are living in a family, as Iraqis, we are a family, okay. So if the father every day kill one part of member of the family, what you will do? You will divorce or not? If the Iraqi, you know, at the beginning in our revolutions during the great General Barzani in 1917, so your father was one of the members of the negotiator with Iraqi during the agreement when we call it March 11 agreement. Always the slogan was democracy for Iraq. Always from that time till today, you know. And now also our parliament when announced, you know, to have the federation system, the federal government in KRG, and democracy for Iraq. But there is no democracy in Iraq, unfortunately. You know, it's mass. They don't believe each other. They're killing each other, unfortunately. So when we want to have our own state, so there will be at least one part for the rest of Iraq to be at balance for both sides. Shia and Sunni, because we approved from 9, you know, it's a very long story. We cannot mention it, everything now, but what happened 1991 when the Peshmerga went back from the mountains after the Kuwait War, Second Gulf War, you know, after they destroying the whole country, destroying 4,500 villages in this country, and they killed 200,000 people. They did the genocides, you know. Was no one of us as a Peshmerga when they came back, or one of the Kurdish families, they don't lose at least one of his member, his family with this regime, including all of us. So it's a long story, you know. So even in our family, 38 people, and just my wife, she lose 4 brother and father and my father all in one day. They just killing for nothing, you know. They were studying in the high school and the university. So this is the situation. But when we came back, we didn't kill one of those soldiers. Iraqi soldiers who occupying our land was our right. If it's anywhere in the world, they will kill them. We didn't kill one of those soldiers and the officers, 125,000 soldiers captured by the peshmerga and by the rising people in Kurdistan. So this was, of course, occupying our land. Even during the Saddam time when the running the country, they were under pressure, our brother, the Shias. So we were accepting all those people, opposition, they were here in Kurdistan, in our mountain, we saved them. We've been together against during Saddam. So what's happened against the Kurds, it was, most of them, they were Sunni controlling the Iraq, of course. What happened when ISIS came, most of the young people, they want to go from Ramadi Sunni area to Baghdad, they don't allow them from Iraqi government. They just tell them if you want to go to Kurdistan. And it was really risky because of ISIS, but the KRG opened the door and border for them, and we received 1.6 million IDPs in Kurdistan. So we don't have any sensitivity with anybody, but we suffer from the war, we suffer from the genocide. We want to have at least as a peace oasis in heart of Middle East. Because if there is no stability in Iraq, it means no stability in Middle East. If there is no stability in Middle East, it means no stability in whole the world. So this is the referendum. It's not about we hate some people or against some people. No, because of our right and because we want to have a real peace oasis here as we have now. We have more than 95% of the minorities in Iraq, they live in Kurdistan. So it's approved for what we want to have the stability in this country.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And please, Bernard.
About the referendum, I'm not going to open again the quarrel, but number one, in this time, of course, it was a referendum for independence. But Massoud Barzani was again a wise statesman, as was his prime minister of this time, Sirwan Barzani. And I'm convinced still today that they had no intention to declare independence overnight. They were very attentive to the balances of the area, open to negotiation, and aware that this independence, if it happened, had to be part of a process. So the referendum was a sort of last moment of a long sequence of war and sacrifices, which ended by that. Number two, of course, independence is justice today or tomorrow or day after tomorrow. It is justice, and it is a necessity for the Kurdish people. When a Kurdish people has been victim of when a people in the planet has been victim of a martyrdom so much, so often, in a repetitive way, when he knows these people that he has no reliable ally, that the ally of today can be the betrayer of tomorrow, there is no other solution than independence. You have examples of that. The Jewish people was and was before the creation of Israel an example of that. Armenia, which is in the news today, the little Republic of Armenia, under attack today by Azerbaijan, pushed by the neo-Ottoman Erdogan, is an example of that. A martyr people who has been abandoned by the whole world and who at a point knew that there was no other solution than to have a safe home, a safe shelter, which is a nation. This is a solution for the Kurdish people, and I am 100% favorable. I don't know when. I'm not Kurd, and I am not a politician in France, but I am 100% favorable to an independent Kurdistan. And last thing which I want to say is that The opponents to independence always say, oh, it will break the balance in the area, it will disturb 4 different countries, it will be a source of instability. I feel the opposite. The creation, when it happens, tomorrow, day after, one day, the creation of a free, independent Kurdistan will be a great seed, a great cell, a virtuous cell of stability in Iraq, in the region, in the area, and in the world. Because when you have democracy, when you have tolerance, when you have equality between women and men, and so on, it means there is no angels in history, and there is no perfect democracy anywhere, and not in Kurdistan also. But when you have a democracy, it is on the, not even on the long run, on the medium run, it is a source of stability, it is a source of peace for an whole area. So I plead for this independence, for the Kurds, because it is fair, because it is just, because it will be reparation of a huge debt, as I said, but also because it will be a source of equilibrium, a source of balance, a source of stability for the rest of the world.
Oh, wow, what a great note to end on. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Ambassador. Thank you, my dear General.
I began by saying that you were both remarkable gentlemen, and you are. I think you've both played such an important role in our recent history, and your words today are very important. I think you both touched on, as you said, the martyrdom of the people of Kurdistan, but I would also add the resilience and the optimism of our people. Despite our tragedies, we continue, we strive, and we still look forward. We still look and strive for better days. And that, I think, is also a characteristic of our people. So as I conclude now, once again, I would like to thank Justice for Kurds, led by Bernard-Henri Lévy and Thomas Kaplan, also Concordia for hosting this, and the Octavian Report. I would also like to thank all of the people who are watching and who have sent in their questions. We appreciate your participation and your engagement. And gentlemen, thank you both once again, and enjoy the rest of your day or your evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for special thanks for Mr. Lévy and Justice for Kurdistan, and Mr. Kaplan, and also Chairman of Coordination, Mr. Nick. Thank you to you. Special thanks to you. You take your time, and thank you for watching us. Thank you for everybody. Thank you.
I just want to say
thank you to everybody. Thank you, Mrs. Ambassador. Thank you, Sirwan. And thanks to Concordia, and thanks to Emily Hamilton, with the Executive Director of Justice for Kurds, and who does a great work for the Kurdish cause. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you so much to everyone. This is Margarita from the Concordia team. This was an amazing conversation. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you, Bayan, for being an amazing moderator. This was such an important conversation. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. The recording will be made available shortly as well. Thanks all.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.